I should rid myself of calling it chapter, but I'll call it chapter 120, Psalms. It is part of a larger book. Psalm 120. I'll read verses 1 through 7. In my trouble I cried to the Lord, and He answered me. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? Sharp arrows of the warrior, with the burning coals of the broom tree. Woe is me, for I sojourn in Meshech, for I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long has my soul had its dwelling with those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. I bring you to the collection of Psalms again, 120 through 134, and sort of the overall title is Pilgrim Praises. They have their own title on them, Songs of Ascent, but we'll look at them individually, but I'll remind you, we'll look at this morning, they're all a part of a larger picture. And they're all pieced together. And so although we'll walk through them individually, I want to spend some time this morning. We'll walk and look at them as they fit together as a whole. Because it's crucial for us to understand that. But we understand that these are pilgrim psalms. We are journeying towards Zion, to Jerusalem. And Zion was used of Jerusalem. It was then used of the whole surrounding region. Later it developed this future perspective, this eschatological perspective. But I remind you of this thought. It is tough being a disciple in an instant society. And there are things that when we look at the world, we find hindrances for us in our walk in faith as pilgrims in this land or as disciples of Christ. There are obviously things that are hindrances to us. And oftentimes we think of sin, and that is the main thing that the world tempts us with. But there are other things as believers we need to be cautious of. And this group of Psalms remind us of some of those things. And so I'll take you back a bit. A couple weeks ago we talked through this a little bit to remind you of some of the things that trip us up. But it's harmful for us as believers to think that somehow anything that is worthwhile can be acquired in a hurry, that we can achieve godliness, if you will, in such a hurry. This is something that we are saturated with by the world, and this is something that is harmful to us in the Christian walk in life. It is harmful in the assumption that if something can be done at all, it can be done quickly. We can watch a 5-minute tutorial on how to fix a sink, but you cannot watch a 5-minute tutorial on how to be holy and how to be godly and how to be Christ-like. But oftentimes this is what we're looking for as believers. We want the easy results. We don't want to put a whole lot of effort into it. We don't really want to take the journey that is laid out for us in these Psalms, but we want it done quick and easy. But there is no easy way to holiness. There are no 5 steps. There are no 7 ways. It is a lifelong pursuit. And the reality of it is that anything that is worthwhile is worth the effort and it's worth the work. Harmful to us is today's passion for the immediate and the casual. Harmful is being in a hurry and looking for shortcuts. Harmful is the lack of patient acquisition of virtue. I mean, it's the reality of the fact that we are so accustomed to everything coming quickly that we don't want to put in the effort. But if it's worth having, it's worth the effort. I mean, you think about things that we really want in life, and those things we will put the effort in on. I mean, just think about it. If there is something that you truly desire, you will put forth the effort to achieve that. So the question then we have to ask ourselves is if holiness is not important for us, then we're not going to strive and give everything we can to achieve holiness or Christ-likeness if it is not a priority for us. And then maybe we need to spend some time in Philippians to reevaluate our value system as Paul establishes his own ethical system in Philippians. It is harmful to be willing to try anything until something else comes along. And we're so accustomed to this. We're looking for the new fads. We're looking for the quick and easy. This is an old dog-eared songbook. This is something that has been passed down from generation to generation. They have been sung by so many believers before us, and they are here for us to carry us along in this journey. Oftentimes we think that the newest thing is the best thing. mean, I'm always reminded my computer, it's like, you know, they forced me to do Windows 10. You've got to have the newest thing because it's the best thing. No, not everything new is the best. Sometimes it is those old things that have been constant for generations to generations are the things that we need to cling to. And we're losing a lot of those in America today. A lot of those things that have stood the test of time, younger generations, especially millennials, are casting those things aside, saying they're old, they're irrelevant, they have nothing to do with the here and now. They have everything to do with the here and now. And especially when we come to the Word of God. There are those in the church today are casting away the Word of God, saying it is irrelevant today. It cannot meet the needs of the church today. Look at all the advancements we have. There's no way the Word of God can keep up with all of the things that we're facing in this society. But the reality of it is the Word of God is eternal. Therefore, it is for every age and any age that may ever come. And whatever it presents to us, it is enough for us. Harmful is adopting the lifestyle of spectator mentality. We want to catch the high points and don't want to put the effort in. I remind you of Romans 12:11, never be lacking in zeal, but fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Galatians 6:9-10, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. We need to continue to press on, and oftentimes the description of the Christian life is that which is long and that which is arduous, that which is a journey. It is a pilgrimage. And there are no quick remedies for the Christian life within Scripture. There are no quick fixes. You think about the other descriptions that Paul gives in regards to the Christian life as he talks about agonizing and contending. As in Philippians, he pushes himself, striving, pushing himself, straining every single muscle that he has to move towards Christ-likeness and godliness. Everyone who travels this journey of faith, they need assistance from time to time, and this songbook gives us that. These are songs for the road. These are songs that encourage us and guide us along in the journey. They are those that are very vital for us, and they are meant for every generation of believer. I can trace my family lineage all the way back to Edinburgh, Scotland. My dad's side of the family, I have traced all the way back to Edinburgh, Scotland, to distant ancestors who were pastors, even wrote a theological treatise during the time of the Reformation. They read the same texts. They read the same songs. They were encouraged by these same songs. My grandparents who went before me, my parents who went before me, have sung these songs and have walked in light of these truths, and they are relevant for me today in my life. I give you this thought by Faulkner. He makes a statement in regards to this group of Psalms. He says, they are not monuments, but footprints. He says, a monument says, at least I got this far, while a footprint says, this is where I was when I moved again. It's a great thing about these Psalms is they keep us moving. The first one is important because it sets us on this journey, but all of them are crucial to this journey that we're on as pilgrims. They are songs for the road and songs that we need to know well and to be encouraged by and strengthened in. So I remind you that these Psalms, these particular songs, the reason for the title, Songs of Ascent, was that they were sung by the pilgrims as they journeyed towards Jerusalem to worship. God gave the nation of Israel this instruction in Exodus 23. He says, 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for which in that month you came out of Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the Feast of Harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the Feast of Ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in your crops from the field. 3 times a year, all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. And so God had given the instructions that they were to journey up towards Jerusalem for these key times in the year, and they were to celebrate these festivals. And these are the songs that they would sing as they traveled from their home towards Zion, towards Jerusalem. And they were those things that drove them on. It showed the progress of the journey. And if you read these Psalms in your own time, you will see that there is a progression. The first one gets you started in Psalm 134. There is this farewell benediction as the pilgrims leave Jerusalem, leave Zion, and head back towards their homes. There is a development, but there's also the issue of family. There are all those heartfelt concerns that we find couched in the midst of this. And I love this because right in the midst of this group of Psalms is Psalm 127. And this one's important. If you read it, Psalm 126, 127, and 28, those three go together. Spend some time meditating on those. They focus on the family, they focus on society. And it's interesting because Luther, during the Reformation, he utilized Psalm 127 and 128 to focus the family and social patterns in a way that they ought to do. They revolutionized the household and society, and he did it based on these Psalms. And without a doubt, they focus on the worthwhileness and wholesomeness of life in the home, in the marketplace, and in the nation. And the reality that they bring out is that without the Lord, all these things are vain. Ye who build a house, if you do it without the Lord, vanity. Ye who get married or have children, do so without the Lord, do so in vanity. He goes on to remind us that anything you do without God, it's in vain. It's in vain. And this sits at the heart of this particular Psalter. I remind you, 15 Psalms, all of them focus on Zion over and over. We find that reference throughout here. There are 5 triads. Only 4 of them follow this threefold pattern. We have distress, we have dependence, and then we have deliverance. So in the first triad, if you will, the first 4 triads, we have the first psalm exposes the situation of distress. The second psalm emphasizes the Lord's power to keep, deliver, build, and give hope to. And then the third one is the theme of security in Zion or in the Lord. And ultimately, the psalmist keeps our focus towards the end goal, and that is towards Zion. Ultimately, it's Godward. Eventually, they're going to reach their destination. That is the thing that is so crucial for us as believers, is keeping our eyes focused on the goal. For us, ultimately, it is to be with God in glory. That is the ultimate goal. We must always be striving towards that. And it determines what we do in this journey then. It tells us the things that are necessary to take along with us and the things that we cast aside. And it provides that value system for us to weigh everything. And then the threefold grouping of Psalms in 132 through 134, we have the Psalms of arrival. The goal is reached, the ark in Zion, the fellowship in Zion, and the blessing in Zion. So I bring you to Psalm 120, and if I could give it this title, it is, Woe is me that I live in Meshech. And this is important for us to understand, because this is really the drive of this, and this is the first step in this journey, and it's a crucial step. But it's interesting, if we walk through this particular psalm, several things that we will find that stand out. First, we have the cry for deliverance, verse 2. Deliver my soul, O Lord, or save me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. Then we have a cry of desperation. Woe is me, for I sojourn in Meshech, for I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Then we have the cry of longing, verses 6 and 7. Too long has my soul had its dwelling with those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. In the midst of this, then we have the confidence in God. But notice the focus on the crying. Notice the desperation. Over and over, there is this lament about the situation the psalmist is in. And this is the prod that gets the pilgrim going towards that final destination. There is no lyrical happiness in it. It's not a joyful song in one sense, but it is a joyful song because in the midst of it, there's confidence in the Lord. But it's not meant to be happy. It's meant to strike a discord with us, and it does in the way that the psalmist composes it. This is the psalm that gets us started. In other words, he is dealing with the fact that he and all others who are pilgrims heading towards Jerusalem, they are submerged in a culture that is swarming with lies and malice. And they feel like they are drowning. Do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like you're drowning in lies? I mean, especially now with politics, right? It's hard to tell who's telling the truth. Sometimes it's the same old story from each one of them, right? And sometimes we get the sense of who can we trust? Can we trust anyone that we're listening to? Can we trust what we hear on the news? Is there any news station I could ever listen to that isn't going to be tainted or corrupted? Right? And who's telling me the truth out there in the marketplace? Are the newspapers telling the truth? They're not even concerned with recording facts anymore. They just make up the story. Yes? And with people, who can I depend on? Is there anyone who is trustworthy? This is the discontentedness in which we encounter here in this psalm. And this is the starting. This is where the journey begins. You must become discontent with this world in order to make the journey Godward. You must be dissatisfied with this place. If you're comfortable with it, you have no desire to move on. I mean, think about it in our own life. Simple things. I don't like the way my house looks. Well, what do? You're going to remodel, right? Dissatisfaction leads me to action. I'm dissatisfied with my health. What am I going to do? I'm going to work out. I'm going to change my diet. Dissatisfaction leads to action. My appearance, I don't like the way I look. I'm going to dye my hair, right? Put on a little makeup or whatever, change my wardrobe. Dissatisfaction leads to action. That is the point the psalmist is making here. He is dissatisfied with this world and he wants to move on from it. Such dissatisfaction with the world is preparation for traveling in the pilgrim way towards God. We will never move heavenward if we're not discontent with the world we're in. If we're not discontent with the things that surround us. His desire is for truth and it is for peace. The first part, he deals with lying tongues and deception. He wants truth. He wants peace. I am for peace, but they are for war. And the two really go hand in hand. When falsehood is sown, there is discord. There is discord. There is going to be contention, i.e. politics. Great example. Yes? You look at someone who does something deceptive and lies and look at the ramifications, contention. This is why I tell my family, my kids, they know from the very beginning, truth. You must speak the truth in this household if we are going to be a family around God. Our God is truth, therefore we will speak the truth. And we cannot have a relationship as family without truth and honesty. If we cannot be open and truthful with each other, we can't have a relationship. It's vital to anything. And these are the two things that the psalmist is concerned with, truth and peace. So I take you to the psalmist's prayer to God. And this is awesome because he is looking to the Lord in time of trouble. I start with this though, his past prayers, verse 1. Notice with me, in my trouble I cried to the Lord and he answered me. The ED tell us, and both cried and answered. This is past tense. Now, I'll tell you, the reality of it is that it's actually in Hebrew, it's perfect tense. We'll talk about that in a moment, but notice the emphasis. And I put the word order here that's in the Hebrew for you. To the Lord I cried, and he answered me. There is such a sense of dependence upon the Lord, a soul dependence on God in the time of trouble and turmoil. You see, I can't stand this world I'm in anymore. I can't stand the things that are happening around me. I am in a state of desperation, and the only place I can go is to God. That should always be the first place we go in everything we face in life. But we know, right? We've been in those times of desperation in our life when things aren't going so well. We know, to the Lord I have cried. But the great thing is, this psalmist says, he answered me when I cried. This isn't something that he has done purely in the past. In Hebrew, it's in a perfect tense. In other words, I've done this in the past and continue to do it. And it's not like he continues to ask and ask because God hasn't answered, because notice the second line of verse 1. He answered me. I've asked him in the past. He's answered me before, and therefore I'm going to keep crying out to him because he's the only one who can really help me in the time of trouble. He's the only one who can help me in this world. When everyone else is lying to me, when no one else can be depended on, he is the only one who is my rock and my fortress. And therefore, he will be the one that I always go to. So I tell my kids, look, I love you, and I will strive to do the best for you in leading you towards the Lord, but you need to understand, I am a sinful human being, and I will let you down. I will. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't like making promises because I strive to keep those promises. I think only one I haven't kept to my wife yet. I'm not down to, 220? That's my promise. I probably will get cancer and then I'll just drop down and I'll say, see, I did it. But I don't make promises very often because I feel compelled. You have to keep that promise. Right? So I learned with my kids, you don't even say maybe. You tell your kids maybe, you're going to do that, right? So I make sure I make distinctions. We cannot depend on other people as much as we would like to depend on them. The only one who is truly the rock, the only one who is truly dependable is God. And when you're in the midst of this world and everyone around you is telling lies, they're deceiving, they're slandering you, you can't find anyone. Go to God. Go to God. Because he will always hear you. I cried. He answered. It's a great thing. God is not some sort of impersonal spirit who's out there that doesn't have a relationship with anybody. He is the personal being who created us to have a relationship with Him. And therefore He hears us and He answers us. Therefore the psalmist already received assurance from the Lord that He will deal with this problem. He's done it in the past. How often we forget this, right? We come into a time of trouble and difficult circumstances, how often we forget how many times God has answered our prayer before in the past. The psalmist remembers, he reminds himself, and he is assured of this fact. And so therefore, the psalm gives us this picture, if you will, praying amid distress garrisoned by divine care. You see, in the midst of my distress, I can go to the Lord and know that He cares about me. Even the things that seem insignificant, like people telling lies about me or slandering to my back, He's even caring about my own vindication in the end. The truth will win out. He cares about those things. Sometimes we think when that happens in our life and someone is slandering us and we find out people are telling lies about us to our back, we want to dive in and we want to do something about it. And usually when we start to respond to it, we do it so out of our human nature, and we do so in a way which we are going to act just like they act, and we become like them. And we end up making the mess even worse than it was when it started. We need to entrust these things to the Lord and let Him work them out. Know that He cares. And know that He will answer your prayer. So therefore, because of the past, the psalmist is going to present his request to the Lord, and he knows that there is going to be retribution. He prays to be rescued in verse 2, and then he prays for retribution in verses 3 through 4, and he uses some amazing imagery here as he reflects on the retributive justice of God. The trouble is taken to the Lord, and He's going to leave it there. He knows that it's going to be dealt with. He is certain that God is going to handle it. And we understand this fact, divine judgment doesn't come immediately, but it will come. Sometimes God vindicates us in this lifetime. Sometimes ultimately we know that the true vindication is going to come in the end. But sometimes He brings it now. But we need to just leave it in His care and let Him mete out the justice and not ourselves. We're fallible, right? Because usually when we want to mete out justice for ourselves, it's driven by selfishness. And therefore, we're not seeking the glory of God. We're seeking our own glorification. So in times like this, we allow the Lord to take over. The Lord's judgment will rest upon those who defiantly abuse the gift of truth. We just know in the end, everyone is going to have to answer for what they say and do. Even in this life, those who deceive, it gets brought out, yes? I mean, honest Ted... There were things that happened in secret. They didn't stay in secret. Eventually it's going to come out, and eventually God's going to mete out His justice, and it's going to be precise. Notice with me the imagery that He uses here in verse 4. Sharp arrows of the warrior with the burning coals of the broom tree. The point that the psalmist makes here is that the punishment will fall where it is deserved. As arrows with the warrior's skill will find their mark. God is always precise. The punishment will be retributive justice of a sin-hating God, i.e. the burning coals. There is retribution. God has designed this universe that way. He has designed it in wisdom. Cause and effect. If we do certain things, it is going to bring trouble upon us. That is the way that God has designed the universe, and ultimately, everyone is going to answer for what they do in this life. There must be judgment. It's crazy to think that people will think that they can pass through this life and say and do whatever they want and not have to answer for it in the end. The punishment will be lasting, the burning coals of the broom tree. It's said about this particular tree that the roots made an amazing charcoal, that it had this longevity, this charcoal. And there is legend that says that there are those pilgrims who had used the root of this tree and used it to start fires, and they had journeyed back around and came to the same location a year later and still found the embers burning. God's judgment is going to be retributive. It is going to be against sin, and it is going to last. It will last. It will outweigh the lie, and it will outlast the lie. Lies are but a moment, right? But the proverb reminds us the truth lasts forever. The pilgrim's problem in this world, and it ought to be our problems as well. It's interesting because this psalm begins with trouble and ends with war. It starts with an unhappy note and ends with an unhappy note. The term that's interesting here is translated trouble and distress in other translations. In Hebrew, it is the opposite of being in a large room. This is really cool. The psalmist is reflecting in the fact that the world is closing in on him. He just can't take it anymore. Woe is me, for I sojourn in Meshech, for I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long has my soul had its dwelling. I feel the world closing in on me. Do you ever feel like that? The older my kids get, the more I feel like that. Because the more I'm concerned with them. They're going to go high school, then college, and the stuff they're going to face in this world, and it's not getting any better. In the last 8 years, it has exponentially gotten worse. And I fear for them in the midst of this world, and I feel like it's closing in on us. The pilgrim feels like he is being restricted and constricted, and the reason is so quickly supplied. Verse 2, deliver me, O Lord, from the lying lips and from the deceitful tongue. I'm just tired of the lies. Just wish there would be a little bit honesty every once in a while. I just don't know who to believe anymore. And it's interesting that he would choose the tongue, because what a weapon. I mean, you read through the Psalms and the way that the tongue is used, it is a weapon. It brings destruction in how it's utilized. In Psalm 10, verse 7, there are several ways in which he describes the lethalness of this weapon: through curses, through deceit, and oppression or threats. It's amazing what this little thing, as James says, we can bless and curse. You can sit there and you could applaud someone to their face, and then you could go home and tear them apart with the exact same tongue. It's amazing how brutal we can be with the things that we say. Now, understand, we need to speak the truth, and sometimes the truth is going to be harsh, but that's the truth. That's not us. It's the truth. And the truth hurts when we hear it. But there are absolute terrible ways in which we utilize the tongue to deal with people. And the psalmist over and over reminds us, do not pay attention to the word. It cannot be trusted. He warns us in Psalm 5:9, the tongues of these liars and slanders are sharp swords. We are cautioned in Psalm 57:4. I love this statement. Faulkner, he says, it is hardly an exaggeration to say that half of the miseries of human life spring from the reckless, malignant use of the tongue. And these wicked tongues generally wag fastest behind person's back or amid excitement of social interaction. He goes on to say, though, we judge these sins of the tongue all too lightly until we ourselves are injured by them. Till it's brought home, we don't really care. We don't even pay attention to the things we say and how we say them until someone does it to us, and then all of a sudden we're painfully aware of how brutal a tongue can be. But you realize it's not the tongue itself. It's the person behind the tongue. It's the heart that moves it. The psalmist is tired of this. He's distressed with it. He's tired of the lies. As far back as we can remember, we've been lied to. We're told as human beings we're basically nice and good. That's not true. We're sinners. Everyone is born equal and innocent, self-sufficient. That's not true. The world is pleasant, harmless place, and we're born free. And if you're in chains, it's somebody else's fault. It's not your fault. There is no consequence in this world anymore. No one answers for their actions. I've constantly tried to teach my children the reality of consequences. That's why Proverbs was so good for me early on, and we constantly go back to it. And I'm constantly reminding myself, you come in life and you're faced with decisions. You have a choice. You can choose this or you can choose that. And either way, you have consequences to that choice. We need to be constantly teaching our children that. But listen to me, if we're constantly bailing our kids out of trouble, they never learn consequences. They never learn the consequences of our action. They keep making mistakes, we clean it up. Make a mistake, clean it up. Make a mistake, clean it up. They don't learn anything. And what we do is we're not helping them. We're making it worse for them. We're digging the hole faster than they're digging it. It's like they're digging with a shovel and we come in with a backhoe. Let me help you out. We think we're loving them. That's not the love. Sometimes we have to say, you made the mess, you clean it up. The world doesn't tell us that. Everyone's got an ism and an itis. It's everything else's fault and everyone else's fault, and it's not mine. I'm shackled, but I didn't put these shackles on me. Yes, you did. See, it's the alcohol's fault. No, you picked it up. You chose to drink it. You chose to smoke it. Yes, you chose to eat it. Psalmist says, rescue me, please. And this is my prayer. Rescue me from the lies of advertisers who claim they know what I need and what I desire. They don't know what I need and what I desire. They keep telling me they think they do. From the lies of entertainers who promise a cheap way to joy. It's not in money. It's not in riches. And it's not in what they're selling. Rescue me from the lies of politicians who pretend to instruct me in power and morality. No, He instructs me in power and morality. Rescue me from the lies of psychologists who offer to shape my behavior and my morals so that I will live a long, happy, and successful life. Blessed, Psalm 1, blessed is he who does not, what? Walk, stand, or sit, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. Rescue me from the lies of moralists who pretend to promote me to the office of captain of my fate. We're not sovereign. God is. Yes, I can turn the finger back my way from the lies of pastors who get rid of God's command so that you won't be inconvenienced in following the latest religious fashions. You see, if I don't teach you the word from context and lay it out for you there so you can see the truth for yourself, then it's easy for me to disguise the latest fad and fashions in ministry and church life rather than the truth. Mark 7, we saw this, yes? Rescue me from the person who tells me of life and omits Christ. Do not tell me you know the origins and then not speak of God. Do not attempt to give me wise counsel and not be mindful of God and His truth. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of people giving me advice and they're not giving it from here. And it's not just in the world, it's in the church. Rescue me from my hostile neighbors. You ever been there? Woe is me. Too long has my soul dwelt. Have you ever wondered, what am I doing on this earth? Why do I still have to live in the midst of this world? Are you dissatisfied? Because without dissatisfaction, there is not going to be action towards God in heaven. Have you ever felt that you're out of place in this world? Literally, the psalmist says in verse 7, I am peace. That is my nature. I am peace, but every time I speak, they are for war. As believers, we've been given a new nature. Yes? Do you feel out of place in the world? If not, maybe we've ingested too much of the world. There needs to be dissatisfaction on our part, church. There needs to be a discontentedness. We need to start stepping away from the world and more towards God. But it's not going to happen unless we're dissatisfied here. If I could put 5 and 6 together, I live in the midst of hoodlums and wild savages. This world is not my home. I want out. I want out. That's why Paul says, to decide whether to live or die, I'd rather be with Christ, and that means die. But if I have to stay here, it's for ministry, right? Being content with the world then hinders our journey towards God. If we like it here, we're not going to want to leave here. The weariness of his neighboring, verse 7, I am peace, but when I speak, they are for war. This is the first step in the journey, on this pilgrimage towards Zion. I hope that over this next week we will spend time meditating on this psalm in light of the other psalms and be challenged to become dissatisfied with the world, to become disgruntled, and not look for a new political leader to deliver us, not look for something else somewhere else, but that we would look towards God, that we'd be so dissatisfied that we would cry out and say, I don't want to be here anymore. Because it's then we start uprooting ourselves from here. We do everything to stake ourselves to this place. We root ourselves down all the time by jobs and schools and everything else. We root ourselves into this world. We are pilgrims. We don't belong here. We're sojourners. Our home is elsewhere. We're just passing through. We need to start shaking some things off in our life. And it's not just things, it's sin. It's the way that the world has infiltrated our life. It is those hazardness of looking at life from the world's perspective, that we can get the easy things, right, without the hard work. That we can be disciples and pilgrims in a convenient world. May God help us as we seek to walk on this journey that we have as pilgrims. Robert, would you close in word of prayer, please?